Saturday, July 6th. Today in Europe, Adolf Hitler returns to Berlin after 8 weeks with his armies on the Western Front. And a huge reception, which Propaganda Minister Goebbels promises will show unparalleled enthusiasm, has been arranged to greet the Fuhrer when he leaves his train in about 1 hour. Nazi leaders say Hitler's return clears the decks for action against Britain. The British have answered with new defense measures, including the calling of 250,000 more men to the army. Now the news direct from Europe, London, Berlin, and Rome. First, a report from the British capital by Eric Severide.
This is London. This morning's air raid communique says that enemy aircraft crossed the coast last night, but only penetrated a few miles in one northeast district. Early this morning, bombs were dropped on a south coast town, damaging some houses. Fighter aircraft shot down one enemy bomber. Another air raid alarm in Gibraltar, the fourth, was sounded last night, but no results of the raid are reported. 6 destroyers are said to have left the harbor as the alarm went off. This morning, Great Britain officially answered the statement issued yesterday by Baudouin, the French foreign minister, in which he justified the break with England and, in effect, blamed Britain for the defeat on land. Here's the British statement. Surprise has been expressed at a statement alleged to have been made to the press by Baudouin, the foreign minister of the Bordeaux government. When, contrary to the solemn undertaking given by the Republic of France to her ally Great Britain, the Bordeaux government capitulated to Germany and Italy, it became from that moment the servant of those two powers. It has now become too difficult to discover whether any statement issued by Monsieur Baudouin or by any other member of his government is genuine or not. But even assuming that this dishonorable statement emanates from him, it must be remembered that it can only have been made public by consent of the Bordeaux government's German and Italian masters. End of quotation. The main lines of British and French propaganda warfare are becoming quite clear. Each time the French government attacks the British will try to get home to the French people the conception of Pétain, Laval, and Baudouin as obedient tools of Hitler and Mussolini. But nothing has yet appeared here to indicate that the Pétain government has made any serious attempt to ask the people of France to approve its existence. But there is probably little doubt but that the National Constitutional Assembly called for next week will support this cabinet and pass its still unannounced measures to change the organic laws of France. It's expected here that a sort of corporate state on fascist lines will result. It appears certain that scores of the senators and deputies who normally would oppose this have already left France. Therefore, it's felt Pétain and Laval should have an easy time. And meanwhile, news filters through to British labor leaders that the first stirrings of activity among French trade unions are now evident, chiefly in the biggest unoccupied towns, Marseille and Lyon. Many observers here are convinced France now faces two alternatives: active allegiance with the fascist powers combined with a Gestapo reign within, or social revolution. If France is broken with Britain, Britain apparently will not break with France, but it's not likely that Britain will try to reopen contact with the Pétain government. Meanwhile, it's announced that 1,000 French sailors from the 47 ships of the French Navy in Portsmouth have now sworn an oath of allegiance to the British Crown. That's not many, but the alternative is compelling, the chance to return home and find missing wives and children. As to the French ships in Alexandria, we're told full agreement has been reached between the French and British naval commanders down there. The ships will be immobilized. 50,000 British children are now registered for evacuation overseas, so no more applications will be received. At the present rate of evacuation, it would require 6 months to get that many out of the British Isles. Every ship scheduled to leave England for America from now until the end of August has been taken over by the government for the evacuation of children. 300,000 men born in 1909 will register for military service in Great Britain today. That's expected to bring the total of registered manpower to more than 3 million. But no longer will these men be asked if they have a preference for the Navy or the Air Force. This is CBS in London, returning you to Columbia in New York.
That was Eric Severide speaking from London. This is New York, and here is a Press Association dispatch from Stockholm. German sources in the Swedish capital today predicted that Nazi military might will be loosed on Great Britain within 10 days. These sources are reported by Stockholm correspondents as saying that it will begin with 6 days of incessant air bombings with 3,000 planes a day engaged. Now we've listened to London. In just a moment, we take you back across the ocean to the German capital, where we hear the latest news reported by Edwin Hartridge. Go ahead, Berlin.
Good morning. This is Berlin. 50 minutes from now, Adolf Hitler will step down from a special train in Berlin's Anhalter Bahnhof station. And when he sets foot onto the platform, he will figuratively step into a new role. He will be a military conqueror returning to his capital after a victorious campaign. And Berlin and its citizenry are all primed with Heil Hitlers, Sieg Heils, flags, flowers, and sunshine to welcome the leader. This return to Berlin after an 8 weeks absence was suddenly announced this morning. We were told about it last night, but were instructed to say nothing until after 7 this morning. But for the last 24 hours, hundreds of workmen have been busy erecting flagpoles, stringing up floral pieces and swastikas, flags and banners of all descriptions. And the Berliner who walked about in the Wilhelmstrasse yesterday knew that something was up. Herr Hitler returns as the military conqueror of Poland, Norway, Holland, Belgium, and France. However, this is not the official victory celebration in the strict sense of the word. There will be no speeches or parades, except the Führer's car and its escort. The party will drive through the packed streets from the Anhalter Bahnhof to the Reichschancellery. There, Herr Hitler will review a picked regiment of his life guards. The scope of the celebration seems to be an indication that Herr Hitler is completely sure of the final victory against England. And when that has been accomplished, the real victory celebration will be held. At this moment, thousands of workers are arriving in the Wilhelmstrasse section. A half-holiday has been declared with full pay, except for those in the vital industries such as munitions and public utilities. Hundreds of SS and SA guards are lining the parade route. Every window is decorated with swastikas and garlands, and the big red carpet has been laid out at the side entrance of the station. Berlin is getting into uniform for the event. Little boys and girls are arriving by the hundreds dressed in their Hitler Youth uniforms, and their adults are coming dressed in their own party outfits. Dr. Goebbels, as Gauleiter of Berlin, has issued a proclamation calling for the people to turn out to welcome the Führer. The propaganda ministry recalls the prophecy of Herr Hitler that this war would be crowned by the most brilliant victory in German history. Dr. Goebbels' proclamation states, quote, "Since the beginning of the offensive, the Führer has stayed in the headquarters in the West. From there, he has prepared the blows which crushed old France. Now he returns after an absence of 8 weeks to his capital. Hundreds of thousands of voices must roar their thanks," unquote. The thousands on the sidewalks are requested not to throw any flowers at the Führer as he drives along. Those who wish to give flowers should lay them down in the streets before his car arrives. Incidentally, more than 40,000 pounds of flowers and petals are to be strewn on the line of parade. Church bells will start to ring when Herr Hitler steps down from his train and will not cease until he has arrived at the Chancellery. As Dr. Goebbels said, quote, "The leader will be given a reception such as he has never experienced before," unquote. In October 1938, Berlin gave a gigantic reception for Herr Hitler on his return from Munich. But according to old-timers, today's reception will be more spectacular than the one in 1938. This surprise event overshadows all other news for the moment in Berlin. Even the announcement of the visit to Berlin of Count Schiano, the Italian Foreign Affairs Minister. He will arrive tomorrow to be the guest of the German government for several days. And he will probably be driven along the same route to be taken by the Führer today. The decorations will not be taken down for several days. Nothing officially is announced regarding the purpose of Count Schiano's visit. However, it may be assumed that he is here to discuss further plans and operations of the Rome-Berlin axis against their common enemy, Great Britain. And in view of events, we are expecting something to happen in the next few days regarding the launching of the Blitzkrieg against England. This is Edwin Hartridge, returning now to Columbia in New York.
And here's the latest news of the Balkans. Today, on the surface, all appears quiet. But Hungary continues military preparations despite reports from Budapest that the nation will achieve its territorial demands on Romania by peaceful means. Now the news from the Italian capital, reported by Cecil Brown. Go ahead, Rome.
This is Rome. The Italians reported today they have consolidated their positions at Kosovo, which they captured 2 days ago. Kosovo is an important railway terminus in the Anglo-Egyptian Sudan near the Ethiopian border. The most serious casualties to the Italian Air Force in any one day since the war started was announced in the communique the High Command just issued. 4 fascist planes failed to return to their bases. As Italian forces reported, they repulsed strong British attacks at the Egyptian-Libyan frontier. The battle occurred in an unsuccessful British attempt to capture Capuzzo and Bir Scaman. These are two Italian outposts near the Libyan border on the Mediterranean. 3 different points in Sicily were attacked by British air raiders. The Italians say at Augusta the attack was thwarted by fascist chaser planes and anti-aircraft fire. They report the same happened at Palermo. At Catania, bombs were dropped on the airport. A communique says an empty shed was hit. There were some casualties among the airport personnel. It's believed the British planes came from Malta, which is only about 70 miles away. Foreign Minister Ciano left early this morning for Berlin, and with him went a number of members of the Italian Foreign Office. Conferences are scheduled with both Hitler and Foreign Minister Van. Ciano is expected to stay for several days, and this indicates a number of subjects are to be discussed. One of these may be the attitude of the Axis toward any peace proposals from England, or it may be to talk about the absence of any proposals from Britain. Another may be the Axis attitude toward the remainder of the French fleet. As a result of the British attack on the fleet at Oran and the virtual capture of those units at Alexandria, some circles here believe that the Axis may revise its previous provisions for the fleet. Neutral observers believe the Italian foreign minister will discuss an Axis effort to induce France to declare war on England. It's said here in Rome that if the Pétain government does declare war, it would give the Axis legal justification for using the considerable remainder of the French fleet. Virginio Gaida in the Giornale d'Italia last night reaffirmed that Italy and Germany would not touch the fleet, and therefore the British action was unjustified. Well, the wave of fascist condemnation against the Franco-British naval battle still continues this morning. The one fact in the Italian attitude which is not clear is this: why the Italians should be angry at the partial destruction of a fleet which they agreed not to use. The fascist press is exploiting the propaganda value of the battle to the utmost. But no Italian paper pointed out that a Franco-British naval engagement does not infringe on the Axis provision for the French fleet. And at the same time, such a fight might have brought the destruction of part of the British fleet. That would have been to the advantage of Italy. There's no mention here why the Italian fleet did not join in the fight at Oran and attack the British while they were attacking the French. We don't know yet in Rome how the United States reacted to what the fascist press calls the bloody end of the Franco-British alliance. The papers carried stories from New York with headlines, quote, "Discussed in America," unquote. They said there was profound anti-English indignation throughout the United States, but no newspaper or individual was quoted as expressing disgust or indignation. The fascist press reports President Roosevelt's remarks about the efficiency of the fascist form of government, but that is all the statement, Roosevelt's statement they do report. The papers here carefully eliminated any criticism of the fascist form of government, and the stories give the Italians the notion that even Roosevelt can find no fault with the dictatorships. The fascist Council of Ministers met today with Mussolini presiding. The work dealt with administration and purely domestic problems. This is Cecil Brown in Rome, returning you to CBS in New York.
And with this news from Rome, Columbia concludes this morning report of European developments. We've listened to Eric Seferide reporting from London, Edwin Hartridge from Berlin, and Cecil Brown reporting from Rome. Larry Elliott speaking. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.